G. The terms used in this section shall have the same meaning as when used in the Revenue Act of 1932, Section 216. A. There is hereby imposed upon the net income of every corporation, for each income tax taxable year ending after the close of the first year in respect of which it is taxable under Section 215, an excess profits tax equivalent to 5% of such portion of its net income for such income tax taxable year as is in excess of 12.5% of the adjusted declared value of its capital stock, or in the case of a foreign corporation the adjusted declared value of capital employed in the transaction of its business in the United States as of the close of the preceding income tax taxable year, or as of the date of organization, if it had no preceding income tax taxable year, determined as provided in Section 215. The terms used in this section shall have the same meaning as when used in the Revenue Act of 1932. B. The tax imposed by this section shall be assessed, collected, and paid in the same manner, and shall be subject to the same provisions of law, including penalties, as the taxes imposed by Title I of the Revenue Act of 1932, Section 217. A. The President shall proclaim the date of 1. The close of the first fiscal year ending June 30th of any year, after the year 1933, during which the total receipts of the United States, excluding public debt receipts, exceed its total expenditures, excluding public debt expenditures other than those chargeable against such receipts, or 2. The repeal of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, whichever is the earlier. B. Effective as of the first day of the calendar year following the date so proclaimed. Section 617, A, of the Revenue Act of 1932, as amended, is amended by striking out 1.5 cents and inserting in lieu thereof 1 cent. C. The tax on dividends imposed by Section 213 shall not apply to any dividends declared on or after the first day of the calendar year following the date so proclaimed. D. The capital stock tax imposed by Section 215 shall not apply to any taxpayer in respect of any year beginning on or after the first day of July following the date so proclaimed. E. The excess profits tax imposed by Section 216 shall not apply to any taxpayer in respect of any taxable year after its taxable year during which the date so proclaimed occurs. Section 218. A. Effective as of January 1, 1933, Sections 117, 23, I, 169, 187, and 205 of the Revenue Act of 1932 are repealed. B. Effective as of January 1, 1933, Section 23, R. 2 of the Revenue Act of 1932 is repealed. C. Effective as of January 1, 1933, Section 23, R. 3 of the Revenue Act of 1932 is amended by striking out all after the word territory and inserting a period. D. Effective as of January 1, 1933, Section 182, A, of the Revenue Act of 1932 is amended by inserting at the end thereof a new sentence, as follows: no part of any loss disallowed to a partnership as a deduction by Section 23, R, shall be allowed as a deduction to a member of such partnership in computing net income. E. Effective as of January 1, 1933, Section 141, C, of the Revenue Act of 1932 is amended by striking out except that for the taxable years 1932 and 1933 there shall be added to the rate of tax prescribed by Sections 13, A, 201, B, and 204, A rate of 3/4%, and inserting in lieu thereof the following: except that for the taxable years 1932 and 1933 there shall be added to the rate of tax prescribed by Sections 13, A, 201, B, and 204, A rate of 3/4%, and except that for the taxable years 1934 and 1935 there shall be added to the rate of tax prescribed by Sections 13, A, 201, B, and 204, A rate of 1%. F. No interest shall be assessed or collected for any period prior to September 15, 1933, upon such portion of any amount determined as a deficiency in income taxes as is attributable solely to the amendments made to the Revenue Act of 1932 by this section. G. In cases where the effect of this section is to require for a taxable year ending prior to June 30, 1933, the making of an income tax return not otherwise required by law, the time for making the return and paying the tax shall be the same as if the return was for a fiscal year ending June 30, 1933. H. Section 55 of the Revenue Act of 1932 is amended by inserting before the period at the end thereof a semicolon, and the following: and all returns made under this act, after the date of enactment of the National Industrial Recovery Act, shall constitute public records, and shall be open to public examination and inspection to such extent as shall be authorized in rules and regulations promulgated by the President. Section 219. Section 500(a)(1) of the Revenue Act of 1926, as amended, is amended by striking out the period at the end of the second sentence thereof, and inserting in lieu thereof a comma, and the following: except that no tax shall be imposed in the case of persons admitted free to any spoken play, not a mechanical reproduction, whether or not set to music, or with musical parts or accompaniments, which is a consecutive narrative interpreted by a single set of characters, all necessary to the development of the plot, in 2 or more acts, the performance consuming more than 1 hour and 45 minutes of time. Appropriation. Section 220. For the purposes of this act, there is hereby authorized to be appropriated, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, the sum of $3,300,000,000. The President is authorized to allocate so much of said sum, not in excess of $100 million, as he may determine to be necessary for expenditures in carrying out the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and the purposes, powers, and functions heretofore and hereafter conferred upon the Farm Credit Administration. Section 221. Section 7 of the Agricultural Adjustment Act, approved May 12, 1933, is amended by striking out all of its present terms and provisions, and substituting therefor the following: Section 7. The Secretary shall sell the cotton held by him at his discretion, but subject to the foregoing provisions, provided that he shall dispose of all cotton held by him by March 1, 1936, provided further that, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 6, the Secretary shall have authority to enter into option contracts with producers of cotton to sell to the producers such cotton held by him, in such amounts and at such prices, and upon such terms and conditions as the Secretary may deem advisable, in combination with rental or benefit payments provided for in Part 2 of this title. Notwithstanding any provisions of existing law, the Secretary of Agriculture may, in the administration of the Agricultural Adjustment Act, make public such information as he deems necessary in order to effectuate the purposes of such act. Title III, Amendments to Emergency Relief and Construction Act, and miscellaneous provisions. Section 301. After the expiration of 10 days, after the date upon which the Administrator has qualified and taken office, 1. No application shall be approved by the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, under the provisions of subsection A of Section 201 of the Emergency Relief and Construction Act of 1932, as amended, and 2. The Administrator shall have access to all applications, files, and records of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation relating to loans and contracts, and the administration of funds, under such subsection, provided that the Reconstruction Finance Corporation may issue funds to a borrower, under such subsection A, prior to January 23, 1939, under the terms of any agreement or any commitment to bid upon or purchase bonds entered into with such borrower pursuant to an application approved prior to the date of termination, under this section, of the power of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to approve applications. Decrease of borrowing power of Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Section 302. The amount of notes, debentures, bonds, or other such obligations which the Reconstruction Finance Corporation is authorized and empowered under Section 9 of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation Act, as amended, to have outstanding at any one time is decreased by $400 million. Separability Clause. Section 303. If any provision of this Act, or the application thereof to any person or circumstances, is held invalid, the remainder of the Act, and the application of such provision to other persons or circumstances, shall not be affected thereby. Short title. Section 304. This Act may be cited as the National Industrial Recovery Act. Approved June 16, 1933, 11:55 a.m.